Alright, so we've entered the 36th turn, 1665, and we see both Latins and Muslims are going to have an increase. The Muslim being the particularly interesting one because that's going to boost them into the Musket period where their firepower count's full. The Turkish slow advances kept them from being able to reach the Baroque period anytime soon, but that'll drop as soon as the Turks and Russians can jump over that. Okay. So this is the turn, and yes, I took a little break to do Kingdom of Heaven, but this is the turn where the Spanish succession crisis comes to a head. The leader died. Bang. Now what? Well, Spain gets to choose a successor, and they already have. They've chosen the Habsburgs. There was this web of alliances. Now, they have to be reaffirmed this turn to take effect. They've run out of time between the Spanish, the Dutch, the Turks. The English wish they were in it. They all want to jump on France, but here's the problem. The Dutch do not want the Habsburgs to remain associated with Spain. They think their position as the Dutch is crap right now. They don't feel like they have a really good flow of victory points, and they want that option to be able to be the Habsburgs. On the other hand, it's not that crappy. They have a lot of key territory. If they can defeat France, maybe it's okay to trade this off. It's a big risk, and they're having really cold feet about whether or not to go ahead with this war or just let Spain and the Habsburgs handle it. It's a really tough call because if France gets to defeat Spain here and gets the advantages from that, this may be the best chance to defeat France with the Habsburgs on their side. Yes, England's more powerful, but maybe England can come in at some point later on. This may be the first chance to really rock them down and hurt them. The Turks don't really feel like they should be involved in this. Not terribly. The only thing they're seeing as an advantage to it is, well, France is kind of pissing them off, but, you know, with the threats about the shipping. But it's tough to see a big Turkish advantage to fighting this war. Okay, so beyond that, what happened? Well, events kind of got duplicated in a way, the regular economic events. Both Turkey and England got a renewal of popularity, which gives you some cash and some other bonuses on improving your economy. France and Russia got a rush of colonists, which is cool for both of them, free supplemental rolls, plus a bonus on their attempt to roll. It's kind of nice. I don't know why the Russians are only here. Probably forgot to move them. I should do one further exploration. I want to get in closer so that I can reach the Manchu next turn. So I think they would have expanded one more space at the very least. And that was kind of iffy. It's a success, but yeah, they make it. Okay. Alright, so they'll be up one. Where am I? Right. Okay, the other events there. The Dutch got an agricultural crisis, which is going to cut into their money, and money is an important thing as you're entering the war. They wanted to build up their navy or something along those lines. Maybe build up some troops for the colonial wars. This is not a good thing to be going into this with less money. They had more last turn and built up heavily, but they wanted to continue that build-up. Our next is the special events. Well, two of them were diplomatic shakeups. They were actually the War of Devolution, getting more and more chances. The big effect there, the biggest effect, was Tunisia is down here. But France and Spain and other countries with diplomatic things got significant drops in their status there. Things like Savoy are gone. So a lot of countries are unwilling to enter this war now that it looked like we're all lined up for it. And we can see how that all turns out. I guess some of the biggest, though, for the French, they really have no allies. The Dutch have Prussia and Hanover, unlikely to bring Hanover or Prussia into the war, except as a foil to something like Poland or the Habsburgs. And the Spanish, well, they have the Italian countries, Venice and Genoa especially, on their side. So those might get called in and would be very helpful, especially the fleets in terms of helping to control. We see the entire French fleets down in the Mediterranean right now, which could be partially counteracted by this very, very good, I don't think you can see him at all, Venetian Admiral. Let's see if we can get him in some light. 455. That, if they can get that, that's going to be a potent addition. The other one is Kopulu, who's, no question whether or not I'm pronouncing that right, who's a Turkish good minister, 897. He has some interesting effects, and I still have to get the pashas on the board. But he reduces, he flips over four, when he comes in, four of the corrupted pashas to their uncorrupted side. And there was only one right now. And then each turn he can flip one over. You can also dismiss him at any time. His big negative effect is that you can't institute Turkish reforms while he's alive. And the Turks are really actually at the point where once they bump over this, they're ready to institute the reforms. So it's quite possible they're going to take this little peace period with France, etc., try to reform their army and become a modern country. At which point they have to dismiss Kopulu first in order to even attempt it. Another option is to hold on a little longer and play with this excellent minister and then make the reforms later. But they have a good leader right now in their own hands, I believe. Someone who's kind of immune to the reform issue. He's got an 8s in military and admin, which is a powerful advantage. I think I'm going to probably get rid of Kopulu, but not right away. I wanted that advantage of being able to flip a pasha over. Of course, once the reforms take place, all the pashas are gone, which is kind of a painful thing, but they're mainly useful against the guys that are near you, and Turkey looks like they might be going to war, more of a naval variety, really. We'll see. All right, onward. Okay, well, how did the diplomacy hammer itself out? For the biggies, we already know the Habsburgs were declared as the heir. A deal was cut with the Dutch. Basically, they can't possibly win the way the French are charging ahead. The French have to be humiliated. They think they've got a better chance of making points off the Habsburgs, but if they lose this war, then they'll have the option to use the Habsburgs. And if they win it, it may give them enough of a boost that as the Dutch, they can still crank out points. They just, sign away this option, but they think winning this war will help their chances of placing first, even if it hurts their victory points overall. Of course, I don't know how good their chances of placing first are, but they are doing rather well on the victory points right now, except for France's huge point lead. They're in the lead, and they can still crank out decent points with the Dutch because of the territory they have cut out, maybe because they can keep their merchant fleets running. If they can ever get ahead of the English again, they'll be in very good shape, but that'll decline again. Right now, they've got a slight advantage over the English in terms of growth. Anyway, the way they're looking at it, it only makes sense to attack the French. So they made an alliance with the Spanish. They got called in, and they're the only people who had to pay a cost for being in this war. The Spanish have the Habsburgs automatically included by making them the heir. And then we have some minors that came into play. In particular, Both Venice and Genoa are in there, although neither one is seriously in the war. The Venetians have military lines, which means they have to stay within close range of their territory, one space away. I think 2 sea zones they're allowed. So their navy isn't even going to be terribly helpful against the French. Genoese, however, an expeditionary corps, that gives them significantly more range. I don't remember how much it is, 6 or 12 movement points, I don't remember. And I think they have free reign of the Mediterranean, I'm not sure. But either way, they're more active in the war than the Venetians will be. We also had some other inclusions. Cologne, they could be fully entered in the war, but they chose not to. They're just in the expeditionary corps level. That keeps Cologne from being wiped out, basically. But all it means that they just send the 1 corps, and that's it. So it's just a few extra troops in that northern area, if need be. The Dutch got Hanover completely involved in the war. They're pretty much safe from French intervention. And what else do we have here? I think that's probably about it. Maybe something I'm missing, but I can't think of it. For other diplomacy, the English cranked Denmark into their camp, and the Turks took the Crimea into their camp. This gives them a powerful position. If Russia attacks the Crimea, the Turks can intervene directly. They don't have a border with Crimea quite. This is part of Poland. The Crimean territory is still within range of their navies, etc. The Turks also attributed their fleet, the Smyrna fleet, to the Spaniards. They could have given it to anyone because Venice holds the trade zone, so they're not too worried about Venice declaring war on them, right? That's not really an allowed situation. But they have to give it to a major power. Their choices, well, anyone being limited to anyone with a port in the Mediterranean. So their choices were limited to France, Spain, and Britain. They're willing to give Spain some extra bucks. They see them as the least of the 3 in terms of evils, and that helps cement the don't use the knights against me, which is kind of, I'm not sure it should be happening. Anyway, but an agreement could have been come to avoid the knights from ever having been created there. I don't know what else to say. This is, I guess we enter the economic stuff. Well, I'm in the midst of the income phase, and I'm noticing something. I calculated France's income once. It came out to like $600, and then the next time it came out to $800. It's these damn calculators I have. I'm used to better ones, but I could have made these mistakes regularly. I really caught this one because it was really blatant, but I find that I'm pushing buttons and they're not always registering and stuff. So, you know, the whole game's kind of in question when your calculator isn't working right. I used to have decent ones that, you know, you push a button and it records it. You don't fat finger and slip into another button easily. These don't seem that bad, but the padding seems to make you slip and jump on something. Anyway, it's just, you know, I've got to get batteries for my other calculators because these things are pieces of crap. I paid a couple bucks for the pair of them and thought, oh, cool, I'll have calculators. Well, for about the price that it cost me to get batteries that would last for a short time on my other calculator. But it's really, you know, one of the things with the other ones is they had oh, what the hell are they? TI. One's a TI 93, the big QWERTY keyboard one, and the other one is the advanced TI 100 or whatever, the smaller size. And I used to use rechargeables on them, but my rechargeables all kind of exploded over time. But what was really cool about them is they'd keep a track so you'd be able to see all the additions you made and find errors, just like you would using paper and pencil. Anyway, the lower technology of my cheapo calculators is definitely much, much worse than I'm used to. And certainly influencing the game, you know, when I can make mistakes in hundreds of dollars without noticing. I've had some where I said, oh, that can't be right, and, you know, maybe didn't recalculate. I don't know. All right, so just about ready to start the rounds here in 1665. Big armies being built. Now, they were already built, so France had most of its army on the board. Spain had most of its army, had almost its entire army on the board. France actually has another army counter they haven't filled, but the Dutch and Spanish are completely full up. The French kind of are fighting this war more on the cheap. Now, they have more money than anyone else, but their builds, first of all, they had most of it built up, but their builds, they didn't take out a loan for their builds, including off-map or rest of the world map type expansion and stuff like that. They thought they could win this without going into debt. Now, maybe they can, maybe they can't. The Spanish had to take a debt, and for them it's kind of more painful, but they got a good roll at the 4% rate. The Dutch, of course, with their stock market, are able to float loans at a very good rate, and they got the maximum loan national. The Spanish aren't in too bad a shape because they have the gold coming, but they're kind of low on money if they don't get that gold fleet in, and the Dutch are going to help escort it with good old Reuter, and the Spanish might give them some cash next turn to help make up for that effort. But they don't have a rest of the world admiral to escort the gold fleet, and they're privateers, so they can't trust to sending it by the commerce fleets. Anyway, there's some question, should France have taken out that maximum loan and maybe bought 10, 15 more ships or something like that? And, you know, it's definitely a valid question. They could well be in trouble by making this too equal by not paying as much as they possibly could. They did still spend quite a bit on their army. The other countries basically funneled just about everything in. Although we do see, you know, new trading posts showing up, colonial expansion and everything. So it's not like people are completely ignoring the rest of the world. Really, you want to make that expansion. Building up your army is so much more expensive than economic expansion is at this point. You know, you could get infantry, you can get a decent amount, but once you build your limit 30 infantry or whatever, it starts costing double and triple. And yes, they dug into those higher numbers, but once you also do that, eventually you get to triple your limit and you cannot buy anymore. And as to buying ships, which is really the big expense here, ships are a pain in the butt. You know, at $10 a pop or whatever they're costing now, the Dutch get cheap at 8. You know, a small fleet, 10 ships, is something you could build, you know, 3 colonial investments at, if you have that many available. So you want to take your colonial, your commerce, all this, because that stuff is going to matter after this war. The war itself, hey, you know, you could win it with less army, you could win it with more. Usually buying the army is a good idea, but, I mean, obviously you need some, but it doesn't guarantee you anything, whereas the commercial and the economic advances do guarantee you something. And if you come out of the war without spending a few turns not providing yourself with those economic increases, well, you're just putting yourself in the hole there. You know, you're letting the war ruin your economy for the future, and that's generally a really bad idea. That's the sign of a declining empire when it has to throw everything into its military. Even Spain's able, with their huge gold influx, to have their army and do all their commercial, maybe at a lower rate. All right. You know what? I'm going to load this up and do the rounds on their own video, because this is going to be one hell of a turn, I think.